last night, the Senate, rightly so, the Democrats held up and blocked, and the bill was not successful to have DHS funding tied to the elimination of the executive orders, the executive actions, of course. Rightly so.
Rightly so, huh? Well, that was left-leaning Democrat Texas Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee on C-SPAN yesterday, talking about Democrats rightfully blocking Department of Homeland Security funding in the U.S. Senate.
This as the budget for Homeland Security runs out this Friday, the looming deadline leaving many to fear the worst. As
we hear Congresswoman Lee tell it, the Democrats are blocking the bill, rightly so, but why are Republicans taking the blame? A point to ponder now with our political panel, not especially adversarial today. A couple of good Republicans, Ford O'Connell, the noted strategist, and my old colleague from the House of Representatives, now the president of Flanagan Consulting, Michael Patrick Flanagan. So, Mike, we're going to get to big news from Chicago a bit later, but let's concentrate on Washington. How is it that the Democrats block this and the Republicans end up with the blame?
Well, you know, Mr. Obama likes to talk endlessly about how the press hates him, but it's not true. They worship the ground he walks on, and he can commit no sins. And they'll continue to back him up on this. I think to bifurcate the vote, as McConnell's talking about doing, has some upside. It might not be the best solution, but it has some upside. And what it'll do is it'll put the president on notice that the Congress now has acted on his executive order to condemn it, so that when they move forward through the court systems, and the Obama administration is actively forum shopping right now to have their case heard, unhappy with the ruling they have in Texas, I tell you that the courts will be hard-pressed to say Congress hasn't acted, so the president has filled the gap. Congress will have acted by that time. So that's one good upside as this thing rolls through the courts. Boehner is at the Republican conference as we speak right now, getting instructions from the conference, and we'll hear later today what the House intends to do about this.
So, Ford, are you seeing an upside?
Unfortunately, Democrats are in a win-win situation. If we don't pass this, we're going to get blamed. And then the headlines on Saturday morning, when we don't fund it on Friday, is going to be, for shame, the Republicans play politics with national security. And if we do pass it, what's going to happen is the conservatives are going to go to war with the establishment Republicans. Frankly, they've got us between a rock and a hard place. I will say this, the problem is right now is that the Republicans got outflanked in the PR game in this situation, and essentially the Democrats are more concerned about playing electoral politics than Republicans are right now about defending the Constitution.
But it has ever been thus, and what amazes me, Ford, is that there's Bill Clinton would say a third way. He might not say it exactly this way. Why didn't Mitch McConnell just keep the Senate in session and dare the Democrats to keep filibustering?
Well, he should have done that, JD, but we lost the PR game when this began. We should have been saying on a loop, 22 times the president said he didn't have this authority. 9 Democratic senators say the president overstepped his bounds, and a majority of Americans are against Obama's amnesty. We didn't do that. We got into procedure, and the Democrats outflanked us, and now they're strong-arming us. There's a lot of different things we could have done in hindsight, but right now we're between a rock and a hard place.
Mike Flanagan, you and I spent our time in the House, but no less a noted commentator than Charles Krauthammer says, kill the filibuster. Due to the Democrats, what the Democrats did to the Republicans under Harry Reid. Your thoughts on that?
I'll go one further. I think we need a constitutional convention and abolish the Senate. And I know it's, what, is he crazy? No, I'm not crazy. England did away with its upper house, and we can do away with the other body. It's superfluous. It was originally elected to be ambassadors for the state. It became popularly elected. It is just a smaller, less functional, utterly dysfunctional House of Representatives, and I think we can live without it. I mean, it provides no balance to the process, and it provides no capacity for the government. I think the Senate has outlived its usefulness all the way around.
Ford, you got 10
Well, I
seconds
agree with
to
Michael
respond.
in theory, JD. Basically, Charles Krauthammer is absolutely right. We need to get rid of this filibuster because it's killing us. Because if we can't get bills on the president's desk, the media is never going to hear our side, and neither is the American people.
Coming back with more, Mike Flanagan's got a big story from Chicago, politically speaking. He'll share it with us next. Alongside Miranda Kahn, J.D. Hayworth here on the anchor desk. Let's continue our conversation with two gentlemen weighing in from Newsmax, Washington. My old congressional colleague, Michael Patrick Flanagan, and Republican consultant Ford O'Connell. So, Michael Patrick Flanagan, big news from Chicago. Give us the lowdown.
I'll tell you, it is big news, J.D. Rahm Emanuel won in the five-man race yesterday, but he didn't get the 50%. In fact, he was predicting he'd clear 50% easily, and mayors are regularly reelected in Chicago 70% plus. He got 45%. He wasn't even in the ballpark, not even close enough to steal it. So he's going to go into a runoff with Chuy Garcia, who is so far to the left, you can't even see him from the center. But I'm going to write him a check, and I know lots of other people who are, because you get a chance to stop 20 years of Emanuel right now, and you can deal with a better mayor in 4 years if you beat him in this runoff in April. And I think Ford might have a view, because he's from Texas, and there's some kind of machine politics, but Republican machine politics there, and that's how we're gonna wipe out Chicago's influence on national politics, is by defeating machine politics in April if we can do it.
What about it, Ford? The whole notion that Rahm Emanuel could get his comeuppance. I mean, here's a guy who left Congress to become chief of staff, then goes back to Chicago to become mayor, then thinks he's going to come back to the House and be speaker, or maybe go higher. To see him get a dose of reality or payback is very tempting.
I have a list of worst people in the world. Number one is Keith Olbermann, and number two is Rahm Emanuel. I would love nothing more than to see Rahm Emanuel defeated. And for the 1 year I lived in Chicago machine politics is the worst thing I've ever seen. But I will say this, it's going to be a high hurdle to beat Rahm Emanuel, because he is a street fighter.
Okay, guys, I have to switch topics now. Let's talk about Hillary Clinton. She may have some competition out there. I want to know, former Hewlett-Packard, is she the CEO of the former Hewlett-Packard? Is she packing enough heat to actually win a presidential bid and beat out Hillary Clinton?
Mike, you want to jump in?
I'm sorry, I should pick one. Yeah, Michael.
It's okay. We're both so courtly and pleasant with each other. Neither of us wants to step on the other guy. I think Carly Fiorina kind of botched her Senate race in California. I don't think she made as good a showing as people expected she would, particularly for the seismic amounts of money she spent. And I don't know that she's very real on the national scene, but that's just my opinion.
Ford, what do you think?
Well, having worked with Carly, I have to agree with Michael on the McCain campaign. I will say this, she's very, very important to the Republican conversation, and we need her in the race, particularly to understand how to better use language when connecting with female voters who are obviously going to be gaga over Hillary, who's looking to just play the gender card all day long.
But mindful of that and looking ahead, if Carly continues to go out and make some pretty good speeches, whomever the nominee is, and I don't mean to suggest relegating a female to the number 2 spot, it is conceivable that her stock could go up, and conceivably she could get on a national ticket, right?
Yeah, I think so, JD.
Anything's possible, JD, but I will say this. I see a few more people that are more likely to be the VP, starting with New Mexico Governor Susana Martinez, and also Marco Rubio from Florida, should he not actually hop in this race or not win the nomination. I think the VP list is long, but we're certainly looking at the possibility of a Hispanic or a female in that role, and possibly both.
Go ahead. Michael, you can go ahead and say something. I know you were interrupted. So
that's okay. I agree with Ford. I think that there's a lot of folks in the race for the Republican nomination who would like to be vice president and don't really expect to be nominated, and I think Carly falls into that box.
One final question. This really strikes close to home for me, as I'm down almost to a single chin here now, and that is the presidential primary for poundage. Some guys are really losing weight. Mike Huckabee and some other folks. Is a diet a sure sign that somebody's going to run for president? Michael Patrick Flanagan, your take on that, 10 seconds, then 10 seconds to Ford.
That was the Washington joke forever. When you saw Ted Kennedy shedding the tonnage, you know he was going to run for something, and that's usually a fair indicator.
What about it, Ford? You're the consultant.
Well, absolutely. We live in the American Idol presidency. Americans like him tremor. I will say this, Mike Huckabee looks like he went to Old Country Buffet.
Now, wait a minute. That's a cheap shot. More when we come back.